I'd like to take up something with the ranking member offline, but I was told this committee was a sexy committee, and so we'll need to straighten that out before we go much further in this
Well,
process.
I'm new to it at this range. Maybe I'll find out that differently.
We'd be happy to put you through the new charm school. Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary, can you tell me how much the IRS budget was increased in this last budget cycle?
Sorry, you mean between 22 and 23,
Yes, ma'am.
or with the request?
No, between 22 and 23, the budget you're operating now, how does it compare to the budget that you were operating with the year before, if you know generally? And you can get back to me later, but,
There was a 100 million decrease.
okay. And so can you tell me if you have an opinion on what the IRS's reputation is amongst the country? Have you done any polling or anything like that to see what generally taxpayers think, middle, wealthy people, bottom, I mean, are they kind of like the National Park Service? Are they a little different? What do you think their impression is?
Well, it's extremely negative because the IRS has been starved for resources. And so there are
So that's what you would-
insufficient
I don't mean to
people.
cut you off, but I've got even less time than the ranking member does. So you think it's resource-related that they have
Absolutely.
a bad reputation? It's nothing to do with historical culture in the agency or anything like that?
The
Is that your
agency
testimony?
has been resource-starved, and it's not been able to invest in the kind of technology that makes it.
Is it your testimony that you think it's because of resource starvation that the IRS has a alleged reputation amongst taxpayers in this country? Is that your testimony? Is it because they were starved of resources in order to have a better reputation?
People know that if you call the IRS, the phone isn't answered, and it's difficult to do business with the IRS, and that reflects a shortage of resources.
I'll accept that as your answer. Can you tell me the specific energy jurisdiction that is housed in the Department of Treasury under the United States Code?
I'm sorry,
Can you tell me the specific energy jurisdiction that is housed in the Department of Treasury under the United States Code?
energy jurisdiction?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Okay, well then, let's try this one. Can you tell me what the election jurisdiction is of the Department of Treasury as reflected in the United States Code? And I'm just going off the statements that were made earlier, ma'am, about, I mean, they were wide-ranging as well they could. I'm just looking for specific jurisdiction in existing statute for energy policy from the Department of Treasury, from elections policy from the Department of Treasury.
Well, with respect to energy policy, for example, our Office of Tax Policy has responsibility for writing the regulations to implement all of the clean energy tax credits that are part of the Inflation Reduction Act and earlier.
So do you collaborate with anybody like the Department of Energy or anything, or is that all Treasury's bailiwick when you're writing those regulations?
We certainly collaborate with the Department of Energy and other agencies that have expertise in this area.
Okay? And I was listening, and I understand how important programs like childcare or low-income energy assistance, those are all good things. Is there any analysis that takes place? Because unfortunately, a lot of this is multitasking, and some of it, quite frankly, is value judgments. But when you talk about, we've got to continue the child care tax credit, and we've got to continue low energy, is there any analysis that takes place in terms of trying to find a sweet spot between what that costs and what is unfunded in the context of the debt?
It's okay if I take it.
Yes, ma'am.
This is where I say we have disagreements, but this president believes it's incredibly important. If we put proposals forward like the child tax credit, we should pay for those.
And I get that. I'm just saying, we don't have the luxury as the budget committee, not the budget committee formal, but the funding committee, to say, we're not going to make this competitive in any way, shape, or form with other federal spending, whether it be deficit spending or paid for by some revenue stream. So am I correct that the testimony is, we don't evaluate what that does in the context of the overall appropriations bill? Those things are untouchable in terms of a budget request?
So I spent 3.5 hours with our colleagues at House Budget, who look at both sides of the ledger, discretionary and mandatory revenues.
Yeah, but Shalonda, that's a B committee.
Don't make me do that. I really like
I would-
Chairman Arrington.
I
Don't do
withdraw
that
the-
to me.
I withdraw the comment.
But that is the committee, and as the former chairman of the Budget Committee sits there, we know jurisdiction in Congress are complicated, but what budget does bring to the table is we look at spending, revenue, all of those things in one place and see how our fiscal house is doing.
Thank you, and because I do not want to follow in the esteemed ranking member of the committee's footsteps, I'll yield back, even though I have no time to yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Amadei. I was about to have his words taken down about this comment about Budget Committee. Now, that's just, that was unacceptable. Who's new?
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so every time I put out a video, you can know about it. It'll come up in your feed. Hit that like button if you liked it. And be positive. Peace.